There must be a better way. I'm going to read this passage from the Course. This passage about the better way is actually how the Course started. The Course started with Bill Thetford giving a little speech to Helen Schuckman after they had a very difficult faculty meeting, and Bill was like, he gave the speech in his office to Helen, I think it was his office, in which he said, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a way that we can all get along with each other, beyond the cutthroat and aggressive ways that we've been dealing with each other. And this was also, he was saying this, I assume he was saying this also to Helen, because he and Helen did not get along either. And Helen, when she heard Bill's speech, she didn't attack him. She actually said to him, Bill, you are right, and I want to help you find this better way. And that was the turning point right there. And that was like a sign to the universe that they were ready, that they were embarking together on this mission to find a better way. And it wasn't long after that Helen began to receive this inner dictation, which was A Course in Miracles. And this was in 1965. This is at Columbia University back in 1965. 7 years later, the Course came. It was fully, finished and completed. And it all started with that little speech that Bill gave 7 years prior. And in the Course, in chapter 2 of the Course, there is this passage. And it's generally, I think, referred to as the Better Way passage. But anyway, here we go. We're going to read it. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in the two levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict, which can become very acute, but the outcome is as certain as God. All right, so now we'll read it. We'll read it again. We'll read a little bit more slowly. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Now, when Bill gave that little speech to Helen, it was he had reached that point where he could not tolerate it anymore, right? It was a point at which he was like, I can't take this, right? And he vented, basically. I wasn't there, so I don't know if anyone knows exactly what he said, right? He probably didn't remember either exactly, but the point is that he gave this little speech to Helen. He had reached this point, the point of no return, right? Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. Eventually, everyone. Now, does that mean in their lifetime? Maybe. Who knows? Some people don't seem to have much interest at all in spirituality. But you never know. Like, I think that some people may, when they're faced with their own death, when their death is imminent, or when they're on their deathbed, they may actually come to this, right? They might get to that point of there must be a better way, right? They might get to this point of spiritual understanding. I could be wrong. Maybe it's in another lifetime. Maybe it's in another plane of existence. I don't know. But the point that Jesus is trying to make is that we all share the same mental apparatus. We all share the same equipment. We all have the ego mind, and we also have the Holy Spirit, right? We have the ego thought system. We have the Holy Spirit's thought system. We can choose between the two. Most of us choose the ego. That's just the way it goes until we get to this point. It's like a breaking point at which we have to decide if we're going to, if that's working out for us, right? If following the ego has been working out, and we may get to the point where we reach that threshold where we can't take it anymore. As this recognition, so tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. Right? So, however dimly is also important there. It might not be a full-on recognition, but you start to become aware that attacking and being angry and being upset and being not in a state of peace is not generally working out, is not generally the way to go. You may not see that very clearly or completely clearly, but at least you see it a little bit. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, so maybe it was dim, but maybe you start to become more fixed on the idea that there's got to be another way to deal with life and deal with people, to treat your brother. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. So this is like turning to spirit, turning to what the Course calls Holy Spirit, and moving away from the ego. And the ego is very much based in the body, and Jesus mentions here is physical sight. Seeing what we see with our eyes is illusory, is lies, right? It's because our body was made to witness to the illusion, right? The ego made this world, and the bodies in this world. So if you start to awaken your spiritual vision versus your bodily vision, your physical vision, physical sight, then you will begin to put less and less value and less investment in the physical, and you'll start to put more and more into the spiritual. But what happens is the alternating investment in the two levels of perception, spirit or ego, is usually experienced as conflict, which can become very acute. So many people who get into spirituality experience conflict, and many times the spiritual journey is very challenging, and sometimes people wish that they had never gotten onto it. right? This is harder than what I was dealing with before. Why did I even go this route? But you really can't go back. Once you start to awaken to spirituality, or awaken your spiritual vision, then you can't really go back anymore. You can only go forward. The good news is things usually get worse before they get better. So even though you have this ambivalence and you have this push and pull between the ego and the spirit, eventually, if you stay with it, the spirit is going to win out. And the way Jesus ends this passage is, but the outcome is as certain as God. Right? So our nature, our true nature is spirit. We are not ego. The ego, it really is nothing and just does not exist. But we have given it priority, and we've given it preference, and we've given it special pleading. And the reality is that it really has no existence, and it has no power unless we give it the power. So this is a fascinating passage. I've said this before, and Ken Wapnick notes it in Absence from Felicity, which is his book that he wrote, biography of Helen Schuckman. It's a very good book. And he mentions in the book that sometimes the words better and another are kind of used interchangeably. So sometimes it's talked about, Jesus uses the term a better way, and sometimes he says another way. What's the difference between a better way and another way? Like, there must be another way, or there must be a better way. What's the difference between saying those two things? Another way, to say there has to be another way is just, it kind of implies better, right? It is better. It's more preferred. It's better because it's taking us, in this case, it's taking us to our true nature. So both terms could be used. Better way, another way, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you'll hear there has to be another way. Sometimes you'll hear there has to be a better way. Really, it's the same thing. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. Please let me know. You can maybe put a note about if you want to say something in the comments. I'd love to hear what was your turning point for you, or what was the point at which you realized you had to seek something else in your life and to seek spirituality. So if you want to talk about that. For me personally, it was I had an experience when I was 19. I talked about this before in some videos, where I basically fell in love, and it lasted for months. And I was free of ego for these, more or less, for these 3 or 4 months. This is back in 1989. I was 19 years old. And I had been, and I think even though this kind of happened spontaneously, there was a part of me, a very big part of me at that point, which was going through a lot. And I was really, I didn't even know how deep I was in ego, right? And in my suffering. And so there was a deep part of me that was like, there's got to be a way out of this, and the way came. And that was my turning point. I didn't consciously think, though, there has to be a better way, or there has to be another way. But I was, in so many words, I was feeling that. And then I had this experience, and it led me on the path of spirituality. So anyway, I hope this is helpful a little bit. We'd love to hear from you, and see you again very soon. Thanks.